Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. Entrepreneurial Podcast with your host, Jeff Lopes. Jeff has over 2 decades experience as a serial entrepreneur, building brands like Kimura from his home basement to a multi-million-dollar global brand that has sold over 250,000 pairs of boxing gloves. Jeff's here to educate, guide, and drive you on the process of bringing your ideas and dreams to reality with the inspiring stories from some of the top business minds.
Welcome to episode 137 of the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today Chris Duffin. Chris is a world record holder, serial entrepreneur. Great conversation with the mad scientist himself. Sit back and enjoy. We are live on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today Chris Duffin. What is up, brother?
Hey, man, looking forward to some good conversation today, my friend.
You have so many layers. And one thing about me, and anybody that knows us, knows our audience and just follows the podcast, understands that I'm very curious. I really try not to learn much about the guests till we get them on. And then we just have a fun, curious conversation. You learn more about the person that way, I find. And so I'm going to start off with just, Chris, where'd you grow up? How many siblings? What got you into the fitness industry? Let's start from you as a youth and work your way up, and let's have a fun conversation with that. So where'd you grow up?
Oh, man.
Well, I'm gonna get in deep here, buddy.
So I got 3 younger sisters, 1 younger brother, and I grew up homeless in the mountains in Northern California. So my parents, highly, intelligent people, but my mom just didn't want to be part of society. She dropped out of school to be a chemical engineer, and we moved up into the mountains. So a lot of living out of tents. Heck, at 6 years old, I think my book starts out with a story of me learning how to capture and handle live rattlesnakes. We're sleeping. We've got beams lashed into the trees because there's rattlesnake dens all around, and so I have to, climb up there and sleep at night. My mom's pregnant with my second sister at the time. And I say Northern California, a lot of people may not make the connection to the area, but there's this area that was like the triangle of all the weed growing, essentially. And there's actually a documentary on the area that we lived in that's out now called Murder Mountain. That was about 50 miles away from where we were. So yeah, it was a strange upbringing.
That's taking living off the grid to another level.
Yeah. And it's not like it was like intense all the time. So, during the school year, we would come down into town, but sometimes it was, living in a condemned building that had no doors, windows, anything. Other times it was a shack that might have running water or electricity or, some combination of that. So it was a lot of just kind of all over the place type environment. And we were taken by the state for a while. So my mom went to jail. That was a little pretty tough time. But
how old are you?
The other thing, I was in 3rd grade when I spent the year in.
So you're a complete baby. You're a baby still.
Yeah, and all my other my siblings were all younger, right?
Wow.
And so it was different because it's like growing up in that environment. A lot of people may not think, they're like, and realize just when you're hiding out from the world, the other people oftentimes that are hiding out from the world that you may encounter may not be there for good reasons. So you're dealing with, and especially in the area that we were, you're dealing with murderers, there's drug abuse, alcohol abuse, drug trafficking. In fact, that's why we were living in that area at the time. They were involved in the trade. And there's, I probably won't discuss, it's just hard for me to talk about, but there's involvement with serial killer and human trafficking as well that affected the family. So that was, it was tough. So parents got us back, and
oh God, it cut off, guys. Internet.
Back into the same habits of not wanting to live in society. So we ended up in the mountains logging, and then really got into mining. And so that is where, a lot of my upbringing through my adolescent years was in that environment. We ended up, while I was in high school, kind of had some stability because my stepfather won a disability suit and they made a down payment on this mobile home. So we had electricity, we had running water. I mean, the wind would blow through the windows. We had to seal them up, and we had to, frame up a kitchen really quick out of 2x4s because there was no kitchen, and hang up sheets on all the doors inside because there's no doors in the house. But like it was stable. My environment going through high school in that manner. I mean, there was some significant, issues in the home and alcohol abuse and stuff.
Were you hiding this, or were you very present and explaining this to all your friends and family, other relatives or friends in high school? Were you hiding this from the world?
I was hiding it from the world. So it actually ended up when my senior year, I applied for a bunch of scholarships. I was valedictorian at the high school and state level athlete. I was an overachiever. And and I didn't get the scholarships I needed. And so I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I was in this kind of, state question myself. And I did this scholarship for the local newspaper, and I wrote an essay kind of just about a point in my life. And they got a hold of me like, "Hey, you didn't get the scholarship, by the way. We're giving it to this guy from a bigger school because he was able to take more classes. He's going to MIT." And they're like, "But we want to write an article on you." And so they came and they did a front page article on me, and then it got picked up by the wire service. It went in the Seattle Times and the Portland, like all the newspapers all around the Northwest. Yeah. And yeah, people are like, "Oh, I had no idea, you were living in a trailer down by the river, the old Chris Farley." Like that's like, we spent so many years, this family that size, living in a 16-foot trailer. Like I would sleep in the back of the pickup truck. Well, you're in Toronto, like we would get 4 feet of snow on the ground. I mean, in Eastern Oregon, it's not like it gets pretty cold. I mean, it's lowest I remember was 40 below. That's in Fahrenheit. So that's actually, I think that's about the same in Celsius where the conversion works. Yeah. And so fitness. I guess it started then.
What sports did you play in high school?
I did track and field, wrestling, and cross country. And I was probably the largest and slowest cross country runner in the state, but I was a pretty damn good wrestler, and I did it to get in shape. And so this was I had a really big, lifting weights and doing that stuff really helped me make a connection with other people, build my self-confidence. And I was, like I said, I was valedictorian. I was the nerd. I was, I had a lot of self-confidence issues based on my, my upbringing and the insecurities that I had. And so it was, that was a pretty impactful thing for me. But I went to, so I ended up getting a full ride academic scholarship and went to a school that didn't have any sports programs that I participated in. And I was fine with, like, I need to move forward with like getting some security in life. Yeah. And so I went to school for a dual engineering program. Things got worse at home when I left because I was the one that kind of took care of my sisters. I worked evenings, I worked weekends, all through school to help support, financially with the family. And when I left, things got really, really bad. And so I ended up taking custody of my 3 younger sisters by the time I was a senior in college.
This is like a movie happening here. We got to turn this into a movie, buddy. This is crazy.
Yeah. Well, it is a best-selling book, but movie hopefully next. Now, so I did that while I was, my senior year. I didn't have any classes because I had actually finished everything in about 3 years. I just had my senior project, so I was already working full time in the industry. Yeah. I owned a house. I was moving. Yeah. And so I took custody of my sisters and I raised them while I finished, my engineering, my advancing my career, working on my master's in business. And that's kind of the route that, the early life. And then, like I said, we kind of lost the fitness, but I was always kind of lifting in the background there. And that was like an important thing for me. And then I ended up
Could I jump in there quickly?
Yeah.
Where were your parents in this picture when you took custody of your sisters? Were they still involved, or are they still around, or are they with us still?
My mother is.
Okay.
So my mother had a mental breakdown and she ended up out in Montana. And my stepfather, the father of my sisters, was just not mentally sound enough he still had the mobile home, although he filled like most of the rooms with dirt to grow weed. And he like kicked when I came in, he kicked out my sister. She was 13 years old in the middle of winter with nothing, just in the clothes she was wearing, because he thought she stole his favorite cereal bowl. So that is, and then I ended up taking custody one after the other. The other ones, they already weren't there because of the issues. And so, so that's where that was. And then, so I raised them. I moved to Portland and I worked on my MBA, got that done while I was chasing my career. And then that ended up being a whole interesting thing. So I ended up over the course of 15 years advancing to where I was at the executive level and doing company turnarounds for automotive manufacturing companies, aerospace manufacturing, high-tech industrial machines. I was like brought in to, fix a company, prep it for sale, get it sold, grow a company from maybe a local presence to a regional presence to a national presence or an international presence. So that's what I did I did that type of work for like 10 years, where I was sought after and brought in to do that sort of stuff. At the same time, I was lifting weights, and I owned a gym on the side just so I could have the best place around to train, so I could be the best that I could be.
What was the name of the gym?
It was Elite Strength Equipment at the time. Later became Kabuki Strength. So
Kabuki, okay.
Did you see there on my shirt?
Yeah.
And I was ranked number one in the world for like 8 years straight as a powerlifter, either the squat, the deadlift, or the total. So I set the all-time world record on the squat several times. And then, I just kind of reached this point in my life. I was making tons of money for other companies. I was making a lot of money myself. Yeah. But I wasn't happy, and my kids were getting older. I had 2 kids. I had
how old are your children now?
12, 9 and 3.5.
12, 9, 3.5. Okay. Very good. Very good. Okay. Sorry. Continue that.
Yeah. It's no, I talk about them all day now. But they were starting to get older. They're going to get involved in sports. I'm lifting. I'm trying to chase my stuff. I've got my hobbies. I build off-road vehicles and just fabricate machinery and do all sorts of stuff. I've got a machine shop at my home, and then I got a job, and I'm like, man, something's got to give here. There's not time for all this stuff. Yeah. So it was a little bit more involved than that, but I've been doing continuing education in the clinical space for a number of years. I was like meeting some of the best. Actually, one of my good friends lives just up outside of Toronto, Dr. Stu McGill. He's the number one leading spine biomechanist in the world. I lecture with him on occasion. He's on my advisory board. But I started meeting like the best of the best in that type of world, in the clinical space, rehab to performance, the researchers. And I started producing videos like a long time, because I was so frustrated with the fitness industry. I was putting stuff on YouTube, just filming sessions, talking to people, because I had the gym, and I just pull people around. Hey, here's this. Let's talk about this. And I post on YouTube, and I was building a following, and I was getting feedback from people like, man, you changed my life. Like I was in so much pain, and I watched your videos, put the stuff in place, and and that's what I loved. I mean, that's what I loved about like it's your passion, my leadership career. It wasn't about like what I did at the aerospace company, but in the transformative process, that doesn't happen. That's not some brilliant reorg strategy or financial. I mean, you're using all that stuff, but it really, to transform a company comes down to transforming the people in a company. To bringing, and you do it on an individual level, and that starts bringing about change organizationally, right? Yeah. And so that's what I thrived on. I love coaching people. I love getting people to accomplish more than they thought possible, to bring engagement in their life, in their work, and then see it in all the other aspects start happening. I help so many people actually move on from working for me, be it going back to school, taking a leap in their career to the next level, or all these sorts of things. I didn't care. But it brought me success in my career by allowing me to bring change to companies. But that's why I loved about like coaching. And I just saw so much breakdown, and I started producing videos, and I'm like, you know what, this is what I'm meant to do in the world. I'm meant to help people live a better quality of life.
Yeah.
I can help people get out of pain and live a better quality of life. And this is what I need to do. And I'd been like building my own equipment because nothing in the gym was like designed right. In my opinion, it was just like not right.
Yeah.
And so I started building equipment, using it in my training because I wanted to be the best in the world. I'm like, I'm going to build the right tools. I'm going to have the right methods. I'm going to have the right environment. 3 things.
Yeah.
So I want to put together, right?
The process. Yeah.
Yeah. And so in 2015, I walked away from everything in my life. Except for my kids. Yeah. So that's the entrepreneur story. And that's how Kabuki Strength got started. But I walked away from my job, my career, which was really high paying. I leveraged all my retirement that I'd worked for nearly 20 years. I took on a couple $1 million in personally guaranteed debt. I sold my homes. I moved into an apartment, and I asked my wife for a divorce because I wanted passion in all areas of my life. And we were good friends, and we'd always been good friends. And I wanted more than that. And I thought I'd just be a lonely dad living that life. But started building Kabuki Strength first, and then that became a globally recognized brand. So we work with the Toronto Blue Jays. We work with 90% of all professional sports teams in North America. So Major League Baseball, 29 of the 30.
How long you been working with the Toronto Blue Jays?
Probably 4 years.
Does Jason Dowse ring a bell to you? He was one of their strength conditioning coaches. He's one of my closest friends. I was actually going to do the intro to him when we're done here, because he runs an incredible podcast. He's running my closest. It's a very good buddy that I've helped with his business and helped him grow his business. But he was one of the head trainers for them for a while, strength and conditioning.
So usually it's our education staff or our sales staff that are working. Oh, okay. So I don't know of course, everybody personally.
Yeah.
I do know all the staff at the New York Yankees and the LA Dodgers because the LA Dodgers strength coach is on our advisory board, and the New York Yankees head is he's a good close personal friend of mine as well. So but I don't know all of them.
Yeah, of course.
Because it's like college teams, 600 plus every single major, every major team. So
you imply, just to get an overview, obviously as an outsider, it's your systems you put in play for these athletes. So is your programs, you put in these things, and then the training staff follows the programs, or is it more your equipment? What give me an overall?
In that, so we do. We're an education and equipment company. Okay. So our education, the beliefs that we have around loading, movement, they also create or see the gaps in what we see in the environment. And so we create products that nobody's ever seen before, because it's about getting the joints in the right position to be able to accommodate for the variability in leverages, mobility restrictions, and training demands. Yeah. So the professional teams and the colleges, they use a lot of our products because they can get the greatest training effect and reduce their injury risks with their athletes, right? Yeah. And so they've got very expensive athletes. We do rehab tools as well. So you walk into the LA Dodgers, the very first, 10 items on the bench, they're all Kabuki that they're touching those multi-million-dollar athletes with before they get to anything else. And so built that, and then started Barefoot, which is my shoe company built on foot mechanics. So we build the best in minimalist footwear, and then supplementation that I do is build fast formula. And so that's kind of the ecosystem of what I've done.
I was about to say that's a pure
success.
That's a pure ecosystem. You're hitting every angle, which is as a business owner, it's perfect.
And then we deal with the clinical too. So we're building that out, but that's why we have the clinical tools, and we've got a lot of interaction. Usually about, like when we do seminars, about 20% of the attendees are usually on the clinic, physical therapy or chiropractic. When I say clinical, is a lot of that area. Athletic trainers, so would be, in that area with the sport teams and things like that. But yeah, so but I built that in the whole, you get this, you're an entrepreneur. Like it's about creating this
holistic.
I call it the ultimate form of art, the ultimate expression of art. It's your ability to see what you think is going to be in the future, to create that now, to be able to express your values and what you believe in and impact the world in that fashion. Yeah. And that's awesome. And it's not you, it's like creating a community of people that are doing it. You're part of that. And so it draws people to you if you really live and breathe these things. Yeah. And I ended up drawing, like, that's how I found my wife. She's Canadian, by the way.
Where's she? She's from Toronto too?
Vancouver.
Okay,
no, Vancouver, BC. Yeah. And so, at 40 years old, I finally found that, wow, this thing in the movies like that you see it is like, that's real. Like, wow, that was a surprise. Yeah. And so it's ended up bringing so much into my life, like chasing this stuff. Like I don't like make the great awesome money and security that I had in that, but I wouldn't trade what I have now. Like I live like, and I have so much more time for my family. People don't realize that, because in that other life, everything's separate, right? And in this, like the things that I do and enjoy are in my work.
Yeah, you can.
And so I don't have to go somewhere else for it. And the people that I want to be around, my community is here. It is like, and so I'm able to do like the extracurricular, my training, the other things. So like I end up with like 4 to 5 hours more a day with my family, which was one of the original impetuses to head that direction. So
I love it. I call it the 3 to 7. I'm home every single day, but I sacrifice. I'm up at 4:30 every morning, but I'm home every day from 3 to 7 with my family. That's family time. 3 to 7 every day, Monday to Friday.
So I call it this. I call it achieving balance through chasing extremes. I work harder than I've ever worked in my life. Yet I've created more, where people go, oh no, it's work-life balance. You have to take away from another to give to you. No. And it's like, no, you've got to find the other fluff and crap in life. And if you actually chase the extremes, it's going to make you find that. And it's actually going to make something more beautiful in the middle. Yeah. So we haven't touched on this. It's not too particular for an entrepreneur podcast, but I'm the only person in history that's deadlifted 1,000 pounds.
Yeah, we're going to talk about all this.
Squatted 1,000 pounds, and I did them for reps. But like, if you tell somebody, I want you to have the most perfect, execute a squat to the absolute perfection, they'll like try to do a body weight or maybe a bar with only a plate or just the bar, just trying to perfect it, right? And then I say, I want you to take that squat and put every last ounce, every drip that you've got of into it, or the 110%, which you can't do, but put 110%, and people go, oh, forms to the wind. It doesn't, just like, it's going to be ugly all. And I'm like, no, I want both. And they're like, well, you can't have both. And so that's actually how you achieve both. Yeah. If you chase both of those, you'll find this beautiful thing in the middle that's so much more. Because guess what? You can't find out where you break down. You can't find out the opportunities unless you chase to pushing it hard, because you can practice this perfection, but perfection without the load, without this challenge, without the stress. And I'm going into this. This is business advice, by the way. Not catching this. If you don't push that, you don't find out those opportunities. You don't go, okay, now, we're failing right here. We pushed it to the edge, but now we know, let's reinforce that. Let's do this a little different. And then you're not going to achieve pushing it to the absolute max if you're not chasing perfection, because you're not going to have leaks. You're going to have opportunities of misses. You're going to have all this stuff that you chase both. And then all of a sudden in the middle, you find something that nobody thought was possible. This beautiful thing. And so that's my I'm really big on this because I hate this finding balance through moderation crap.
No,
I'm
on board with you
through freaking extremes. And so that's how you find that. But at the same time, it makes you really understand and look at the things that aren't important in life.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have to drop some of them. It's going to force you to figure those things out. Right.
I love that.
It's going to make, yeah.
I think, I mean, that's your natural entrepreneur coming out, just the way you're talking, because if you're a natural entrepreneur, and I know people argue about this forever, are you born an entrepreneur or you're not? I'm a strong believer in you can teach somebody all the skills, but you can't teach somebody the hustle and that drive. That's just kind of built in you. And that strive for perfection is what makes you achieve so much more, and not even having that fear to challenge yourself, because everything beautiful in this world that grows has to be challenged. So I love what you're saying there. All this you're saying, what does fatherhood mean to you?
Fatherhood to me is about, like I said, I've got a best-selling book. You've got a best-selling book. You probably give motivational speeches to your employees here and there.
I want it from the heart. What does it mean? Yeah, what does it mean when you look at your kids?
I'm getting there. I'm building some context first, okay? Because it's not necessarily just the words and the lessons and the things that you try to impart in that fashion. You need to show through your actions and how you live your life to your kids that they can create and form the world around them as they grow into adulthood. And that is what I try to do. That's how I try to empower them to have that belief, because not only have they been told it, but they've seen it. They've seen it in actuality. And we see, like, I love how much information out there is about people promoting fathers being involved with their family, which we didn't see in some of the prior generations with, being at work all the time and only having a little bit of time on the weekends. And there was just some different generational gaps. But at the same time, it's almost gone too far, because now we see it where you give up everything. You subjugate yourself to the highest priority, being the children, and you subjugate your life and give up a lot of things. And I think that disempowers your kids. That creates an environment that tells to them, hey, you're going to enjoy this time till you're a kid, you're in my home until, you move out. And now you're going to have this time in adulthood. It's going to be short-lived, because as soon as you have a kid, your life is now, you're not going to do the things that you want. You're not going to create the change. You're not going to create the legacies. You're not going to, right? And so I'm like, wow, do you really want your children to live that way? So I'm not saying not to spend that time and have this, like, absolutely 100%, but you need, for your kids' sake, to be able to continue to chase the things that you want to do in this world, to be able to create the positive change, to leave the mark. And that, my friend, is going to show them, not just in words, but in reality. It's been walk to walk in front of them, that they can create and form the world around them in their choice, which is, I'm not going to. So many people are like, oh, your kids are going to be the next blah, 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 or the next power lifter, or this. I'm like, no, I'm not. I hate that when I see, the father that's out there that you can tell is pushing their kid to be in something or part of something and achieve at a level because they never got there themselves. Yeah. That is just
living vicariously.
And that's not it. Like, I'm like, my kids are going to do whatever it is they do. Obviously, I believe physical culture. So this is something you need to be chasing challenge. You need to be chasing improvement in 3 areas, and that's body, mind, and soul within your life. Yeah. If you have a deficit in one of those, you're going to affect all the others. Yeah. And so we need to push that. I don't care what avenue of physical culture. It could be running, it could be swimming, it could be doing your hiking or whatever the heck it is. But you need to have some component of that in your life. It doesn't need to be lifting weights like I do. Yeah. Right. But we need as human beings, this is a very simple, this is physiology. And this goes beyond human being physiology, but like there is no life without stress, without challenge, without the things that make you go, God, I can't wait till this is over, or I get through this to when I can enjoy that time to relax.
Yeah.
Too much of that time to relax is the start of death. And this is not ethereal at all.
Yeah.
This is, you've got an exercise background. In exercise, we call it the SAID principle, specific adaptation to impose demand.
Yeah.
But that is, life is working against those things. And if we don't have those things, if you break your arm and put it in a cast, it will start the process of atrophy. Opposite of if you go into the gym and do some curls, it'll get stronger and more resilient. The ability, and this is how you layer. This is how you get better and better, right? Just like a workout, same process in business, same process of body, mind, and soul. The mind and soul are the same exact. You can only withstand so much. You've got a threshold right now. Well, you go exercise that. Take some rest, but not too much. It's not all the time, not burning the candle on both ends all the time. And then next time you can handle a little bit more, right? It's like, I know I've got that. Maybe I could take a little more. And that's how over time, over years, over decades, you increase your capacity to handle those things, your ability to handle the stress. And I said, and to articulate how this isn't ethereal and this is, beyond. I gave the arm example. I love that. But I also like the tree example. So trees, like, we know now that a tree, if it grows and it doesn't have the elements, it doesn't have the wind beating against it, right? And that, the other environmental factors, that tree is going to grow to a certain height and it will just fall down. Doesn't matter what kind of tree it is, right? And we know this through the experiments with the biodome. They couldn't figure out what was happening at first. But without the wind beating against it, there's nothing that tells the tree to grow those roots strong and deep into the ground, to take root and hold it and be able to protect against the elements. And it gets so tall, now it can no longer do it, falls over and dies. Like, so this is, I want people, because people will think, oh, that's, I'm on board with it. They'll get it, but not really understand just how deep these things are, that it is actual real. It's not just philosophy.
Yeah.
So, that time that you're in your business and you're sitting there and you're like, man, this is so hard. Where the team's like, there's stress. There's like those early phases of business. I don't know if we're going to make it, the constant challenges, and you get through that. And then the next one comes. It's like, man, I can't wait till, what that is, are going to be the glory days that you and your team refer back to and tell people about 10 years from now. Go, back in the day, man, this is, because that's what creates the excitement. It's hard now, but those are going to be the things that you remember in life.
I always say that. Enjoy the journey.
And they're the things that are going to make you better. Now, make sure you don't push it too hard. Just like my upbringing, there was a lot of trauma. I had a pretty high threshold. I was able to deal with a lot of stuff. But we all have different levels. And if it's too much, just like if you go, I continue to use the exercise examples, one, my background and knowing a little of your background, right? Yeah. Like if I go do CrossFit daily doubles, 3 hours a day, twice a day for 7 days a week, you're going to start breaking down. You will quit gaining muscle. You'll start having bone fractures. Like you have to have, you push it, but you got to know, like for you, 3 to 7, I got my time with my family, right? But if you just said, hey, we're going to go on vacation for 3 months, and you came back, you sip Mai Tais on the beach, you'd come back and you'd be soft. Yeah. You'd be soft mentally. The next thing that comes and hits you, you wouldn't be quite ready. You'd be caught off your heels, right? And do that for a couple of years. It gets worse, right? We get soft, not just physically, when we don't flex that muscle. Yeah. And so, sorry. I'm sorry. I love analogies. I know you're doing it. I
love this. I love this. I'm usually the talker, so I'm loving enjoying this conversation. There's a couple of things you said there, which I love, because it's something I persistently push on people is, I'm all about business. I'm all about family, but I'm also all about myself on top of everything else. The whole Oprah thing where fill your glass and mentally, spiritually, physically, if you're not at your peak, you're not going to be able to serve your business, serve your family at the max and be able to take care of yourself. So I'm a strong believer, 1,000% what you're saying. And I love the whole thing, which I do something where with my kids is I'm always pushing myself. I'm always doing something new, always trying a new venture, always trying something different. But what I do with my kids are 13, 15, I make them hold me accountable. So I'm teaching them. So what I do is before I come with a new venture, I'll tell them my crazy idea. and I'll say this dad's going to have this done by this day. And now they're so used to it, but it's that thing where they hold it accountable. So when I achieve the goal, I could go back and say, hey, what did I say I was going to do? And that shows them everything's possible. And that builds that little wind under them. So it's holding yourself, I think is very important. I think a lot of things with entrepreneurs is the accountability factor, right? And having someone, especially a loved one, where you could turn into a lesson and allow them to hold you accountable. I think it's so awesome, right? Mad Scientist. Absolutely. Where'd you get that nickname? I kind of figure, but I'll just let you I'll let you tell it.
Yeah. I come up with these crazy off the wall ideas. Well, they're not crazy off the wall ideas. They're just things that people wouldn't normally think of. And I got dubbed that by a good friend of mine. Actually, it was just when we were just starting a relationship, but the world's strongest bodybuilder, Stan Efferding, the Rhino. Okay. I showed up one day and I fixed his back problems and his shoulder problems. And he's a TV personality. You know, he's on Shark Tank. He's on he's an entrepreneur. Yeah, obviously. So they're recording this video about our training or something, and the camera comes on and he's instantly transforms into, and he's like, I'm here today with the mad scientist, Chris Duffin. And like, it just stuck. That was a long time ago. And so I've just run with it. I
love it.
There is, you know, speaking of being an entrepreneur, like personal branding is a huge thing. People connect to a person and not as much to a company and the products, right? Yeah. And so it's a leverage tool.
Quick question. When did you figure that out? When did you figure that out? Because I always had that mindset, Chris, where I never wanted to connect myself to my companies, because if I ever wanted to exit them, I never wanted to have that attachment. Yes. And about a year and a half ago, I changed. It's only been about a year and a half where I've started building my personal brand for the first time ever.
So I've actually done this since high school. Yeah. The newspaper article that hit the wire service, right?
Yeah.
That's when I figured that stuff out. Like the connections, and then I had colleges calling. And then in my career, I started building this brand of being this turnaround expert and how I'd articulate this. And then like I could walk into, I'd do a 9-person panel interview for 4 hours, and I'd have them just eaten off of, like, it didn't matter. Like if I wanted a job, I would get a job. I could have made really good money. But I was two things. I wasn't willing to work more than 15 minutes away from my house. I wasn't willing to work after 4:30 at night. I will never work a Saturday. And this is it. Like they would bring me in, I'd be like, I'd be replacing people that ran around with their hair on fire. And I'm like, this is how I operate. And they're like, okay, because my results spoke for themselves, you know, like, but I'd marketed myself. And then, but my companies, you're right though. You don't want to have your brand be your company. Yeah. So
there's a fine line there. It's a fine line there.
It is. So you need a personal brand. It's like an Elon Musk. Tesla will survive without Elon Musk, but Elon Musk doing what Elon Musk does will leverage that further. So that's like what you're looking for, because, hey, if something happens to you, you're doing all your employees a disservice and their families a disservice, because if it is, and this is like the high end speaker guru people's, oh gosh, I wish I could think of the name right now.
Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins. Like
yeah, exactly. He's the brand. He's everything.
He's the brand. Yeah. And once you can't be that person, hey, I don't want to be in the media anymore. I don't want to, like, it is over. It's done.
Yeah, totally.
Right. So the company needs to be self-sustaining on its own. It has to have its own brand identity, not yours. But you can still create a brand identity and promote and support that, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I went with the Mad Scientist, that is what I do. I'm not. There's some awards up here on the wall for scientific achievement, and this is not like that is a real thing. I have patents, I've got awards, I've got like all this, there is when people say, oh, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, that is a real thing. I technically am a scientist. But yeah, I create innovative stuff. It's out of my mind, and game-changing things that come to the industry that bring change that nobody's seen before, as far as methodologies and equipment. And that's what I'm doing. And so it's good. And I do run around. Like, I mean, I think my hair's okay today because it just happens to be. But, sometimes it's all over the place because I don't comb my hair. I don't think about it. I got stains on my shirt. Like You're authentic. I've got major ADHD and I'm bipolar, and it is the way it is. And I'm okay with being imperfect online.
But you're authentic.
That's me. Like, I went for like this. Yeah. It was like, I filmed a video about my hair finally, because people are like, they were giving me such a hard time online. I'm like, have you noticed I'll produce marketing videos, all sorts of stuff with, I've got a big social media, and I'm like, it's all fucking disheveled and whatever. And I'm like, people, it's that way because it's me. And I don't want to go in and be made up and done all, and create this personality that isn't me.
But that is what attracts people to you. I think we live in a society where social media, there's so much fake bullshit out there that the people that are authentic, if you see my feed and see my stuff, it's all about me. I don't give a shit. Like, I'll put my podcast, and then I'll put something of my kids, and I'll put something funny. Just be you. And if people want to follow it, they follow it. And I think that's what makes it so special, right?
I did this great video. It's on my IGTV under life philosophy stuff. It's the one that's called Unkempt. And it's like all the things I am. Yeah. And it's kind of like a poem, and it articulates that message really well.
I love it. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about your powerlifting, because that's something I want to hear about. Did you ever compete in the World's Strongest Man competitions, or was it just more like the circuit or whatnot?
Yeah. So they're just different. Those are different sports. So
they are. Okay.
Yeah. They lift weights, but it's like a basketball versus volleyball. Right.
Okay.
Or, so there's Olympic weightlifting, which is so that's the one that you see in the Olympics.
Yeah.
And that's a clean and a snatch.
Yeah.
Strongman is kind of like a really heavy CrossFit. So really big implements, but a lot of endurance type events, and it changes all the time. So there's no like fixed, Olympic is here's these lifts. Powerlifting has always wanted to get into the Olympics, but hasn't got there. Probably because a lot of drug use is
of course,
powerlifting, right? Yeah. But it is a squat, a bench, and a deadlift, and they add them up for a total, and that's same kind of thing that they do in Olympic lifting, but it's a different sport. And so I did that from 2000 till 2016.
Okay, so 6 years.
And I was ranked number 1 in the world for 8 years, set lots of records, and then I walked away from that. So I continued lifting the next 5 years. But it's exhibition lifting. You can call it lifting for the gram or whatever.
Yeah.
But it is an important discussion, because that's when I walked away from all the things in my life. And I decided at that point, I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I wanted to do it on my terms. And that's just where I was. I'm like, I've shown what I can do over there, but I want to do something very specific. And I didn't tell people what it was at first. I just said, hey, I want to deadlift 1,000 pounds. And I said, to do that, I can't do it in a competition because I've got elbow problems and I can't rotate my arm. So I have to actually turn my hands to use straps to do that. Strongmen, by the way, they can allow straps.
Yeah. I've watched, growing up with my dad, I remember all the strongman competition. It still gives, always watch.
So the strongman allow straps, but they don't allow a sumo style deadlift. So their deadlift is the Guinness World Record. So I said, I applied to Guinness, and I said, well, what if I do a sumo deadlift? And they're like, yeah, they approved that as a category. And then, so I did an exhibition lift at a world competition for powerlifting with straps, because it was not in there, wouldn't meet powerlifting standards.
Yeah.
And I trained for this for a year. And my goal, I didn't tell anybody how long, was to do it for reps. And there's a reason I want to do that. But I did it for almost 3 reps. But the first one counted as the Guinness World Record. It still stands. But it was more than that. So it was this thing I called the grand goals. And it was to be the first person to ever squat and deadlift 1,000 pounds. And on top of that, do them for reps. And the reason for that, it's a threefold thing of what this campaign, it encompassed 5 years of training on top of my 25 years of training before that.
Yeah.
And but it's grand. It's over the top. I wanted to show people, like, when I didn't say what I wanted to do up front because people would have said I was crazy.
Yeah.
It would have been, you're talking out your ass. I'm like, I don't need that negativity. People don't need to know what I'm up to. I'm going to do it because I want to do it. But I want to show people at the end of the day that you can achieve so much more than you think is possible. I'm going to do something that people think is impossible if you dedicate yourself to it.
Yeah.
So grand, over the top.
Yeah.
So that was it. So it was over 5 years, and I did a lot of training pieces along the way that were people didn't understand. They were feats of strength tied to the development.
Yeah.
And everyone was a fundraiser for things that I believe in, things that have impacted my life.
Yeah.
And so that was the second piece of it. So it was, like I said, it's threefold. The third one was to be able to demonstrate the ability to control and manage spinal mechanics, because that is that's one of the core components of our educational principles is that. And so there's about 6 people that have deadlifted 1,000 pounds and about 6 people have squatted 1,000 pounds. Nobody's ever done both because their leverages are kind of lean one way or the other. So they're a little bit of a specialist, strongest people in the world, but they're not able to do both. So I wanted to go, I'm not a specialist. I can do both and demonstrate what our principles do in this world. A person like myself, who I've had back problems so bad, I had to learn to walk again after nerve damage in the past. And I can do this with no pain by following these principles. And so that is a big piece of walking the walk and doing 2 movements that are fundamentally, the squat pattern is something that develops around 9 months of age. So if we look at developmental kinesiology, our core movement patterns are all ingrained. You've got a kid, if you watch them in every, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, they all have these certain patterns that start rolling pattern and then getting into a crawling pattern and then getting into they happen at the exact same sequence because they're ingrained in us. And so every able-bodied person should be able to do this. So a squat is just an incredibly basic motor pattern that everybody that's able-bodied should be able to master. And so I wanted to push that. And then the deadlift is another just primal pattern, being able to pick something up off the ground. And so I picked those 2 movements because of that, and to show the non-specialist and be able to demonstrate those things. So took me another 4 years working on the squat, but 2 days before the world shut down. So it was originally supposed to be in San Diego at the largest equipment expo in the world. I was going to do this feat of strength. By that time, I told everybody what I was going to do because it was very obvious. I mean, I was squatting over 1,000 pounds in training. And so it was supposed to be there. And then the week prior, they're like, events off, because all the events are shutting down. We're like, okay, we're just going to do it. We have to punt. Like, I was at this point in my life where I couldn't keep training. I couldn't sustain that level anymore. I couldn't. I trained specifically now, like the whole training plan leading to that day was 1 year long. Right. And so I couldn't move it. I couldn't shift it going, this will clear up. I couldn't come back another year from now. I was getting older. I was 43 and just like that, it was now or never. So it was like, okay, let's move to a local event. People can come in, and then, 3 days beforehand or 2 days beforehand, they're like, meetings, no more than 25 people. And then it was like, no, so we turn it into an online event, and then it gets, and so that happened on Saturday, and then Monday the world shut down. So
aren't you so happy?
It's a good thing I did it, because it never would have happened. It never would have happened. And actually the last 6 months was being filmed for a documentary that should hopefully be on Netflix next year. It's been got slowed down because of COVID, because they're doing the backstory on my life with interviews from my book, The Eagle and the Dragon, all the stuff we kind of talked about, but interview style, like, why the hell does this guy do these things? What is this all about? And so that, it's crazy. Just like it happened, at that time. Maybe it's something that people needed to see. I don't know, but it was, it was pretty powerful for people that followed along. There were so many people messaging and commenting, going, they were crying watching me because they know how hard I'd worked and everything that had gone into it. And I said I was going to do 3 reps, and I just barely, I stood up and I fell over on that third one. And I just was burst with tears. I was crying it was so emotional for me.
I love it.
And
accomplishment.
There's an iPhone video out there of it. It's on my channel and probably floating around if anybody wants to watch it. It's pretty cool because we're saving the highly produced video isn't going to be in the documentary.
So when did they come to you to talk to you? But was it you reached out for the documentary, or somebody else reached out to you?
So it was.
It's funny because before we started this conversation, I'm like, we got to make this into a movie. And I didn't, little to know it's going to be a Netflix documentary, which is pretty cool.
So it's an independent guy who's been working on some other things, and he was working on a documentary for someone that I knew.
Yeah.
And it ended up kind of flopping. Like the storyline fell apart. They were following some athlete to whatever. And I'd hired him to, my company had hired him to produce some content for our educational system. Yeah. And so he'd flown down to San Francisco and he was there with me. And I'm like, hey man, here's my story. Like, why don't you pick up like this? And he's like, yeah, I think that's it. And so he started coming. He lived probably, I don't know, maybe 3 hours from here. So he'd drive in a couple times a week and be filming. And he started getting going on. He's like, okay, this is a story. He's like, all in. So he went out for funding, got a few different people to fund the movie. We were a large component of that. And then it slowed down because of COVID, and also because as he was working on it, we saw how good he was, and we hired him and moved him to Portland, and now he's buried in work. So he hasn't had time to finish the independent side of that he was, because he was an independent guy. And then, we're just like, you need to come here. And then he got too busy with us. So, but I think he's close to doing it. And then we have, several connections to some existing producers that will review that have 6, 8, 10 plus movies on Netflix. So it should be anyway, that's how that happened.
That is pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. I always near the end ask a couple of questions. Usually I don't have no set questions for a whole conversation. Superpower. If you had one superpower, what would it be? Yeah. And don't say strength, because that's obviously there.
Well, that's tough because I have superpowers.
What are they?
Undying confidence in myself.
Love it.
The ability, to manifest and create the things in the life that I want to live. And that's, like I said, those are, and we can see that output in the strength. That's an output of those things. Yeah. And that's, what's interesting is that's a superpower everybody can cultivate, though. Yeah. And people ask about how do I get that confidence? And the first step in that process, and this is an important lesson as a father too, is to fail. Yeah. Learn. Yeah. But then to come back around and be smarter, work harder, whatever, and come back around and know I did that. I can overcome, and just keep building. The more of those you get under your belt, the more confidence that you have. And we were talking developmental kinesiology, and we're talking fatherhood and stuff. Like a child falls down like 50 times in this process to walk, and everybody wants to hold them up and walk them by their hands and get them a walker. And it's actually the worst thing that you can do. The best thing that you could do that's way better than that is stick your foot out, kind of kick them, swipe a leg, and have them fall down again. Because they have to develop the resilience and the strength to overcome that themselves. You can't give that to you. You can't hold them by the hands, and you will actually create fault patterns if you do that, if you hold them up and support them. So think about that in your relationship with your employees, your kids, your other things, because you need those times to overcome that yourself.
I love that, because it goes
builds confidence.
I love that because it goes back to almost to your theory on the tree, right? The resilience, the wind. Yeah. You need to be pushed and challenged. I love that. I love that. If something were to happen to you today, in a few words, how would you want to be remembered or described by your loved ones? Making you think now.
He changed me.
I love it.
I left my mark. I changed something about them.
And you're doing that
for the better.
And you're doing that. Yes. You're doing that by the masses, which I love that too. This is awesome, brother. How can our audience get a hold of you?
So I'm active on social media. Everybody's probably listening to this on a little device. What you do is you type in Chris Duffin. That's like muffin, but with a D on anything, and I'll pop up. So Instagram and Facebook, I'll have the little blue check. I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit. My personal website, definitely you need to go to Chris Duffin or Christopher Duffin. That's Duffin, like muffin, but with a D, .com, and sign up for the email list on there because you will get the first half of my book for free. So it's the book is The Eagle and the Dragon. I'm going to send you the eagle, no strings attached other than your email. But with that email, I'm also going to email you discount codes to all of my companies as well. They're exclusive. We don't do sales, but you're the only one that's going to get discounts and exclusive educational content as well via that. So it's really great. You can unsubscribe from any of them if you want to as well. There's also a link to my audiobook on there. So if you've got Audible, it's a credit. I read it. If you don't have it, there's a great program where you can sign up for Audible and get my book and one other book for free if you sign up on the link on the website. It's a great deal, but obviously there is a little bit of a tie there. It's not entirely free because now you've got an account. And I think they start billing you in like 60 days. But if you don't have Audible, you should check it out. So it's a great deal that so I have that on there. So those are pretty easy. I mean, I'm not going to spell out the remember this with an underscore, blah, blah, blah. Just type in Chris Duffin. You guys are smart. You'll figure this out. I don't overthink it.
Muffin with the D. I love it. You can't get any more simple than that. I love it.
I used to hate, Microsoft Word and all the other programs when I was growing up, like always autocorrect it until you change it. Muffin. Now I'm like, man, that's so easy for people to remember that. So I use the thing that I used to hate all the time. So
I love it, buddy. This has been a great conversation, man. I'm gonna make sure we have you on back in the near future, and congrats on everything and all your success, man. I mean, you're obviously doing wonderful things, changing a lot of lives, and you're living with a smile on your face every day. So that joy is infectious, right? So that'll just keep motivating and pushing people along the way. So congrats on everything you're doing, brother.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for today. I want to thank our guest, Chris Duffin, for taking time out of his busy schedule to be a guest on the Jeff Lopes podcast. Great conversation, tons of insight, tons of lessons today. If you guys enjoyed this podcast as much as I have, tell your friends, tell your family, spread the word, leave a review. 5 stars would be absolutely amazing. We love spending time with our team, reading the reviews. Until next week, guys, keep moving forward.